right, so here is what we have going on. Let's look at the reports. And what I'm going to do is we're going to look at some of our reports for our Industry 37. Your class is all of Industry 37. So we'll be looking specifically at ours, but I'll also bounce to Industry 38 occasionally to make a few points that I think are valuable to make. Similar to what we always have here. Just a second. We've got the typical scoring going on, and most of the big numbers were in the positive direction. So congrats to the G team, the L team, the E team, and the C team. So at least there were significant improvements going on. And as far as the biggest fall down, it probably would be the H team at -12. So that's just for this particular year, year 16. And this, as you know, is the game to date. Okay, so that's that basic issue. Brief overview to see what the heck's going on. Other things that you know that I like to look at deal with the industry overview. And this is then telling you what's happening with the increasing demand. And this actually gives you the numbers over the next couple of years. And as you can see, this expected demand for year 17 is really just the addition of this and this. So it's a fairly simple way of kind of keeping track of that. But you can, if we were going to continue into the future years, you could see that growth as well. And as usual down here, we've got some identification of what your competitors are going to be able to do. For example, one that everybody should be noticing is the B team, is that they had a fair amount for the last 4 years because they've been adding. And it looks like they added another 4 million pair of shoes to their Latin America. Again, as a competitor, you see this firm maxing out and really bulking up in the capability to build shoes. They're probably going to want to use that space. So you have to anticipate more stuff coming out of Latin America for the B team. So you can get that sense for everybody else. And this, as you know, is the total space available, but that does not mean that or you have the equipment to make it. And then this is talking about the total basically capability with the equipment. So for example, the B team has 29 million they could be making and 16 million in equipment. Now again, you could add 20% to these things. There's the H team that is down at 13 million, and at this moment they have a capability of 5.5 million. So that could mean that they aren't going to be producing many, but as you know, if you buy equipment, you can use that equipment the same year that you are building it or paying for it. So they could immediately boost that number this year. And it takes a year. If you're going to add construction here, it will take a year before you can actually use that. So the industry overview gives you kind of what demand is going to be going on, as well as you can see your versus your competitors' capabilities and be concerned about some of their potential expansions. And if there's any questions you have on any of these particular screens, it can be very useful. Okay. So I'm kind of highlighting what I do to look at competition. The other big thing that I do to look at competition is under this comparative competitive efforts. So as you know, you've got the whole idea of in North America, what's going on. You can change that to all of the other areas. So I look to see one thing is if 8.3% is the average market share amongst the 12, where does my team lie in comparison to it? So we've got anything from 11.6, 10.6 down to and 14 down to 6.5, 5.9, and 1.1. So those I think are good things to either be happy with. For example, this team with 14.1 saying, okay, significantly better than the average. And what have we done in order to do that? And can we keep it up or even enhance that? Then the teams that are lower is trying to figure out why are we at that low point of market share and what can we do to boost things. So the other things that I look at have always to do with what's going on in private label. Are there opportunities there? It looks like there's a lot of teams that are hoping to provide shoes, but some people lost out on their bids. And the reason they would lose out on bids, one, obviously if their price is too high, and you can see again the whole idea that there's a maximum of $54 that could be charged, yet we have one team that charged $58. And this team also provided way higher quality shoe than was needed. Do not do that. That is a mistake. You can see in a private label decision screen what basically the shoe star that they want. They don't want anything more, and they obviously can't take anything less. So if anybody had, for example, here's a 4.8 shoe that was below the 5-star shoe, so they didn't get any sales. This one was higher than that, so they didn't get any sales. Plus, they had too high of a star rating. Here's a team, the D team. They had a bid that worked, it stayed under it. They were able to sell some shoes, but they created a much higher quality shoe than they needed to. So in other words, if they want a crappy shoe, but you give them a pretty good shoe, you paid a lot more for that pretty good shoe. If you gave them what they wanted, you could have made more profit. That's the point. There is absolutely no benefit in this particular scenario where you're sending a higher quality shoe impresses the company so much that they decide to pay for your shoe because it's a higher quality. They're just looking for that. Now, the reason that you sold any shoes here is because your bid was still competitive by the time that they were working up to their demand. Let's see, and obviously up here is where you can compare your numbers to the others. You can see that maybe this 1.1% market share, you had a 5.2 star, which is below average. So here's the average is a 7. So you're below average. Here you have models of 351 average. You're much lower at 100. Another huge factor is the average price is $64, yet you were charging $85. So there's 3 specific factors on why you would have limited your sales compared to average. And then the other big average is if there's $17 million on average being spent in marketing and you're only at 1.5 million. So these 4 factors, which are a big 4 factors, were all in the negative on boosting your sales. So you got some explanations there. So looking at key things in comparison to others or the average can be of value. Then the other factor that I wanted to point out is, again, just down here, with the spread that's going on. And I pointed this out before, but you can see a fair amount of spread. And actually, let's look at some of this over the different years. So let's go back to the first year, year 11. You can see that a lot of glomming going on, not much distinction. G and A were trying to set themselves apart. The next year, a little bit more spread, G going higher, B coming out, H kind of sliding down there to the left. Let's keep going the next year. Okay, there's general move to more products, more models going on. Year 14. You can see still a little bit more models for everybody, but we're seeing a little bit more variance on SQ rating going up and down. Year 15. All right, you can see some teams definitely went high models, B, F, and D. K was going up a little bit. So there's some spread here and a little bit more spread here. H is out on the island here. And then finally this year, you can see G and C went and took some risks to go to the low models and get away from the crowd. So I think there's wisdom in trying to find the spread, getting away from everybody else. And now it's just executing it fairly well. All right, so then there's that issue. Other things I want to point out have to do with the negative numbers. These aren't too bad. It's just saying that this team could have sold about 300,000 more pair of shoes, similar here and similar here, based on the demand configuration that you created. There's a little bit more demand for it. Let's look at Europe, Africa. Again, similar. I look down here to see what's going on. Looking at, again, this team, the I team, had too high of a price and too high of a quality star shoe. The D team also created too high quality of a shoe. Didn't need to do that. Here you can see probably even greater spread amongst everybody's. You've got this up and down and going across, and a little bit of some shortages here. All right, let's look at the next. Again, a lot of them offered too high price, too far star. Similar, looks like the D and the I team. Make sure you reread the help area of private label, not only on what the maximum price is, but also on the demanded SQ rating. Again, just because you're too high of the rating doesn't mean you won't sell anything if you have the right price. If you have the right price, even if you have that high SQ rating, it just means you're not going to be as profitable per pair of shoe, and unnecessarily. Sometimes people think that they have to create the exact same SQ rating shoe in private label as they do in the wholesale brand, and that is not the case at all. Anyway, this is Asia Pacific, and let's look at Latin America. Again, too many offered, a lot more offered, and prices, and let's see, nobody, yes, actually the H team was too low an SQ rating. One thing that I should mention, and this is in the help area of private label also, is in private label, you have to at least offer 100,000 pair of shoes. So whenever you offer less than 100,000, your bid will not be accepted. Even if you had the greatest price, let's say you had a $32 price here, which would have been just a glorious price. But if you're not offering 100,000 or more, then you will not be considered. Basically, the analog in real life is that if Walmart's ordering millions and millions of Walmart brand shoes, and and you just offer like 20,000 shoes or 48,000 shoes. Basically, that's not enough for Walmart to deal with. It's too trivial a number, and they want to do business with larger with companies that are dealing with larger numbers. Again, down here you can see a lot of spread, and I think this might be what happens earlier in phase B. Is instead of having 2 or 3 rounds where everybody's glommed together, you will more quickly try to establish something slightly distinct. Now, again, remember, even if you're glommed together, if you execute it well, you can still do well. So I'm not saying that the only teams that are going to do well are separate from everybody else. Yeah, that's not the case. If you execute well, you can still have that. Even with a lot of competition, you can do well. Okay, so then that is these comparative efforts. It's always a valuable place to try to find out what your teammates are doing. Looking at the regional average efforts, you can also look in Latin America. Let's just do North America. Okay, so then this is what the averages have been in North America over the years. And so you can see some of the trends, and you can maybe anticipate what will be happening in the future. And that can be helpful. Other things I like to look at deal with financial performance. You can see that there's a difference just because you have a certain net profit. That doesn't mean you have and with cash on hand. So that's a good thing to keep in mind, that there are things between that profit and then looking at your cash flow and then with cash on hand that are useful to look at. And then that would be a lot of that is in your balance sheet. If we were to look at that C team, which ended up with 0 cash on hand, is because they had a fair amount of spending going on that took that, I think, 27 million in profits down. And you can see they purchased equipment, upgraded options, and paying off some loans there. And then this down here gives you what any loans you've been taking and your annual payments. The income statement is something I always recommend that you be looking at to see in each region, are you making money or not? Now, I've had times where I'm making, $25 in one and only $3 in another. And from my point of view, I'm thinking, is there a chance that I could try to sell more in that more profitable region and minimize what I'm doing in the less profitable region? And sometimes with shipping, manufacturing, things of that nature, you can sell more in the higher profitable areas. So that's out of the income statement. So this is branded internet wholesale. This gives a general overview, which includes private label. The other thing I like to look at in the financial statement statistics deals with days of inventory. And I don't think in our teams it is very bad, but that would be in your distribution and warehouse. I pointed this out many times, and it's the number right here. Darn it. Again, I don't know if it was in this industry or my other class, but one of the teams had 6.8 million pair of shoes a couple years ago, and actually they were able to address that, and they cleared that out in 1 year, which was very surprising to me. But anyway, this can tell you a lot of information. The other thing that I always recommend you look at, as usual, has to do with production and workforce, and that is this number right here. I'm always encouraging you to get between 100 and 120. So the C company was below that, and my suggestion would be to try to boost those numbers, because then your per shoe cost ends up to be cheaper if you're able to use more of your factory space, unless, well, unless you use it private label, but this is saying you didn't even use it private label as well. All right, covered a couple screens. Any questions from anybody at this point? Okay. Let's see. Now I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure I've mentioned that the way that I score is, this is in response to a student question, whether it was with everybody or maybe just one-on-one, is how do I assign the points for phase A performance? And there's three things that go on. One is going to be looking at overall team performance. So in general, these individuals that are up in this area are going to have higher number of points than those in the lower, with the greatest chance that the F and G teams will have slightly more than the K and D and things of that nature. So that's a general thing. The other, one of the other main parts has to do with the trends, and that has to do with these pluses and minuses that are going on. So I'm going to look at a number of years, probably from 13, 14, 15, and 16, and see in general if teams were going up or kind of straight, or if they were falling down. Because the trends over the last few years are really kind of the collection of how much are you learning, how much are you understanding this simulation. And that is the primary thing I want to have happen out of here to see that. So you might have had a rough start, but if over, and you might have been down in one of these places to start off the first few years, but if over the last several that there's been a general move up, then from my point of view, you're starting to understand the variety of cause and effects that are going on. Probably as a team, you are collaborating more effectively, and those are all good things that would boost somebody's points. So for example, the J team I might be thinking, okay, a lower number of points, but the trends are going up, so it's going to be higher points than I would originally have given. So that's two factors. One is your overall ranking as a team. The second part is the trends over the last 3 or 4 years. And then the third part has to do with the peer evaluations. As I mentioned before, as you have all experienced before, you've been in work teams, or specifically groups, teams, and classes, and there's always been that one or two people that didn't do very much. And it drives you nuts that they didn't contribute. And it's even worse if by chance they get the same good grade that you earned, because you and another person put a lot of effort into it. The project turned out well. This one or two people didn't do anything, and quite truthfully, they do not deserve that good grade. So that's the third big factor. And tonight is the second peer evaluation that is due. So make sure that in BSG that you are finishing that, and also write comments down there at the bottom for each of your teammates. Those comments are very helpful. Now when I'm in a face-to-face class and walking around, going to table, having a lot of conversations and interaction, I'm pretty good at picking up on who's contributing and who's not, who's BSing their way through, and who has done the studying. But clearly it's much more difficult when we are in this Zoom or total remote type setting. So I'm going to be relying on you giving me honest feedback about your teammates. So that would be much appreciated. All right, got a lot of drawings on that particular screen. Let's see. Another part that I would be looking at as far as trends go have to deal with the stock price and things of that nature, with earnings per share. Um, are these trends going in the right direction? Usually they correspond to the other trends I was talking about, the pluses for every year or not. Oh, that's right. And that financial statistics, um, stock purchasing, buying back shares of stock is a wise move if you have the money. So I think you're helping yourself out. You all started off with 20 million shares of stock. Some of you are down to this 18 million something, and that tends to be helpful in your earnings per share and stock price. Now, the team that is at the H level, uh, H has over the years raised a lot of money by selling shares of stock. And that is one approach to raising money to pay for your various investments. However, for phase B, I would strongly encourage to minimize the selling of stock to raise money, and to use more of the longer term loans. Those 5 or 10-year loans tend to be much less destructive to stock price and earnings per share. So give a heads up on that. Also, well, the shareholders like it, and your stock price likes it when you are buying back shares of stock and also giving out dividends. As I mentioned last time, make sure that you are reading in that help area about the proper approach to give out dividends, because there's one that can be helpful, yet there is a few tactics on giving out dividends that are not helpful at all and destructive. So you're going to want to do a little bit of reading of those paragraphs. Okay. And of course, the production benchmarks will have your team's numbers out here on rejects rate. I think I mentioned, and I would strongly encourage for phase B, is to seriously consider methods to minimize your reject rates. When you're at about 9%, at near 14% of your production is in rejects, that ends up costing a lot of money. And there are things you can do. There's a variety of decisions that you can do in different screens that can help you cut down on your reject rates. And I will look forward to phase B to see that happening, amongst other things. All right, then in operating benchmarks, here is, again, your profits compared to others, your expenses compared to others. And this is not to necessarily freak you out, but it is to give you some information. For example, somebody is spending in North America, in the internet segment, they're spending about $40 a pair of shoe in just marketing costs, whereas somebody else is spending $6.26. All right. So why? Is that a good thing? And it might be. Maybe it strategically makes sense, but that is a significant amount of money. So, and your numbers will be right out here in this column. So you'll be able to react to these type of things. And you can see that at least in Europe, Africa, somebody is losing $3 a pair of shoe. Somebody is losing $12 a pair of shoe in Asia Pacific. Those are not good things. You're probably not going to want to repeat that for next year. And then in private label, you can also see, and it looks like everybody was making money in private label. So that's a good thing. Let's see. Celebrities, what's happening with celebrities? You can see this just has price trends, but this is also showing who has what, and the accumulation here of total points at this moment with regard to celebrities. And you might want to look to see if those teams that have lots of celebrity impact, how well they are doing in the performance. So let's say D and G and K, D, G, and K. Let's look at that. D is right here, G, and K. So actually it looks like the three top spending companies for celebrities are in second, third, and fourth place. So that may indicate that that strategy can be helpful. And then F is the top one, and they're in the ballpark. Let's look at E and J. And anybody else with a really low number? Let's, yeah, E and J. And E and J are down here. They have not spent anything on celebrities, so there could be some influence there, the benefit of having some celebrities in your marketing approach. So just putting that out there. One thing you want to do in this phase A is to try to pick up as many of these tactics or nuances or cause and effect influences that you can. So then as you move into phase B, you will be ready. Again, phase A, you guys had no clue what was going on. It was extremely complicated. The vast majority over phase A have spent time looking at it, talking to your teammates, and learning a lot about what seems to have an influence and what doesn't. So phase B should be a much richer experience. And that is the plan, where you've got a baseline of information and understanding of this complicated simulation, and you'll be able to take off. I think you'll enjoy it much more here in phase B. Let's see. Yeah, let me talk about all right, so here is a different class, and it's not our class, but as you notice in the production workforce, we've got 120%, that's what I'm shooting for. The B team has 110%, the C team has 120%, and the D team, 120%, E team, 107, and now we're looking at 43%. This is very difficult. This makes it tough to make much money. It's when you're only using 43% of all of your capacity and stuff like that. So they are actually telling production to make about 5 million out of potentially 12 million. And actually you could add overtime to that. So this is the type of thing you want to avoid. But again, it's not anybody in ours. You will want to look at your number right here, production and workforce, that number right there, because I think somebody in one of our teams might be in the 30s. Yeah. So every other team here is over 100% except for that F team at 43%. It's not a good situation for them. All right. Are there any questions before we move on here? Anybody? Okay. And certainly I hope that you are becoming quicker and quicker at looking at the reports. There's certainly an approach to doing this where you don't look at any reports, you just start entering numbers, and you hope to find some numbers that seem to make the projections look good. So that is So there's no coherence, no strategy, no wise approach to that. It's just a happenstance. So if by chance anybody's doing that, maybe it might even go okay, yet I think there's a tremendous loss in the value of this class if there is very little collaboration and looking at the reports, trying to have the conversations and figure out what the heck's going on. Actually, I had a student last semester that I could tell, and the teammates were telling me that he just enters numbers with no sense of what's going on or right. And I remember talking to him about it and suggesting that he look in the help area, and he kind of did this brief eye roll of, oh yeah, right. Anyway, so he continued just to enter those numbers. His teammates continued to be frustrated. And I might have even given a story at the very beginning of the semester, I'm not sure. But he largely had a job offer, but with COVID, he ended up losing it. And then he wrote me to ask for a letter of recommendation. And quite truthfully, I could not write a letter of recommendation for him, since I did not feel like he put in much effort into the simulation, into the class, and that he did not get much out of the class. He didn't put much effort into it, and if that is a reflection of how he would be on the job, then I'm compromising my reputation and my name by recommending somebody that is a questionable employee with a questionable work ethic. So there's a lot that can be achieved via this simulation, via the collaboration with you and your teammates, and try to looking at the reports, interpreting, discussing the reports, and experimenting with some different things, and then reacting to the good or bad. So that's a huge benefit of this class. Anyway, the simulation, I think I've talked about things. The one other thing I want to point out that I especially want you to be familiar with, and actually I will do it in the other class, is to remember, in your wholesale marketing, right down here is where you're putting in your competitive assumptions of what the averages are going to be next year. So then when you enter all of your numbers throughout all of these screens, all of that is sorted through and filtered through your assumptions that this will be happening. Now, the way that they found these numbers, the way that they found those numbers is because those are the numbers that were over here. So you take these averages for this year and you put them into this area. All right, so in real life, if you are making Apple iPhones, then the Apple iPhone company is going to assume that Samsung and Motorola and all of these other phone companies are not going to change anything next year. So then you Apple can determine all of your production, all of your technology, all of your anticipated sales based on competition that is not changing one iota. Okay, that's kind of a dangerous assumption. Probably your competition is going to be doing something else. So that is where you can go in and manipulate these numbers when you think something's going to change. Now, a couple ways that you can do that is you could look at these comparative efforts, saying, okay, this is the last year, this is year 15, so you can see what might have been any changes. The other place you can do that is right here, the regional average competitive efforts. So this takes those averages and puts them right here for you, easy to see. So these are the latest numbers that are in there. These were the year before, year before, year before. So you could look at the trends and then make some predictions of what's going to happen in the future. So let's let's just do a simple one. So we've got, let's look at the SQ rating. So we've started off with 4, 5, 5, 6, 6, 2, 6, 9, 7, 7, 4. So there has been, and actually it is this right here, there has been a constant uptick. So last 3 years, 6, 9, 7, 7.4. You might think, okay, if everything's kind of keeping the same, maybe I'll anticipate that it'll be a 7.6 next year. With models, basically it has largely stayed the same the last 2 or 3 years, okay? Marketing has kind of stayed the same. The price has stayed the same. So maybe all I'm going to do is I'm going to go in to the wholesale marketing and I'm going to change this to 7.6. So now I think that is a more accurate reflection of what next year's competition is going to be. Given that I'm more accurate here, the concept is then the projections will be more accurate. So anyway, there is wisdom, and in your real life, if you can do a good job of anticipating what your competition is going to be doing, you're going to be well received and well liked by your bosses. So anyway, that's just a couple different things to help you with those projections. So that's the regional competitive, and clearly you can see that Europe, Africa, you can do this for all 4 regions. And then the time series will just focus on you and your company and what you have been doing. And I'm not actually sure if, actually you probably could, you might be able to look at your direct competitor if you wanted to. If A is competing directly with F, you could look at the F situation and what they have done. Okay. Yes, the other thing I wanted to point out, and which am I in industry 38 good? Where are the reports? All right, so here's your net profit. Here's your cash on hand. This is not good. This is not good at all. This, for some of these teams, that is way too much cash on hand. I do not want to see, and keep this in mind for your final round 7 performance. I don't want to see big cash on hand. Remember the recommendations around maybe 10 to 15 million. So I'm only happy really with D or E here. What's going to be happening with A, with B, with C, definitely with F, is you're going to have a bunch of your stockholders ticked off because they want you to give out, they want you to buy back shares of stock. They want you to give out dividends. If you have a bunch of money like this just left over sitting in the bank, your shareholders are going to want you to have given that out somehow. Now, one approach is to make your stockholders happy directly by the shareholders or the profits. The other things that should have been happening is more improvement in your equipment. I mean, there's a bunch of ways to spend money. You could increase your marketing. You could put more bids on celebrities. You could upgrade your physical plant. You could buy more equipment. You could expand into other territories. You could put more money into corporate social responsibility. You could do this, you could do that, you could do this. There's lots of ways that you could be investing in the future rather than having all this money sit in the bank. So one thing I will be looking at next year as you finish round or phase A is how much cash did you have on hand? And I guess one general rule is I would like to see less than $40 million here, because I think you could invest that money elsewhere. And the other quick point I want to make, yes, we are done with phase A. Round 7 is the last round. The way that I want you to look at this is that your company is going to sell itself. and you want to make it look attractive for the next purchasers, for some other company to come in and buy it. And you need to be invested well. You need to look attractive from a point of view of having the facilities, having the equipment, having a respectable stock price. It's a major problem to sell a company if things are in decline in your company. For example, stock price, earnings per share, things of that nature. So you are setting it up. You're setting your company up to look attractive, to sell and get a premium price. Okay. There we go. And so this is industry 37, or it's 38. I do not think this class had that type of problem. No. Okay, so we didn't have any 200 or 300 million dollars cash on hand. So this looks much more manageable, and glad to see that. So a lot of buybacks, which I'd like to see, giving out some dividends, which is a wise approach. All right. Let's see. I think I am done with discussing BSG right now. I think I'm going to move on to a couple other chapters, review a couple, unless there's some questions about BSG right now. All right. Then let's look at Chapter 5. We briefly talked about Chapter 5 before. It talks about the 5 different strategic options. And here are those 5. You can try to be a low-cost provider. And these are the companies that you've already worked in have largely been one of these two. Try to sell stuff because you have the lowest price, or you sell stuff because you have higher quality stuff. There's some features to that product or service that that customers are willing to pay extra for. So that's those two. And then the other approach, are you trying to address a broad selection of buyers or a fairly narrow segment? So those are 4 quadrants, and then kind of the in between, trying to do multiple parts. So that's, again, a big part of Chapter 5. And then it talks about, okay, if you're going to try to be lower cost, what are the ways that you can succeed in driving down costs? So there's lots of great techniques in here that I think are wise for you to have some awareness of. And the 2 general ones happen to be perform value chain activities more cost effectively, or do a significant revamp of those value chains to bypass some. And if you're familiar at all with lean manufacturing or lean service, this is largely focusing on value chain every step of the way. What can we do to look at the situation, the inputs, the throughputs, the outputs, to make it more efficient, reduce costs. And I hope many of you have been exposed to the lean concepts, whether in a different class or you've taken that specific type of class. So there's information here, and I think, as I showed before, these are all different ways that you can focus on things. And you can see that many of, just within BSG, you've got raw materials. You can pick superior or standard materials. Capacity utilization, we've talked a lot about before. As you have gone from round 1 to round 6, hoping that you've learned and become much quicker at things. Economies of scale, are you able to have a bigger factory and produce millions and millions of shoes, or a lower number? That helps with scale. We are not, in BSG, really not having an option to do any outsourcing, but that certainly has been a way that a lot of teams have tried to, or a lot of firms have tried to cut costs. Certainly investing in software, my guess is most of you have worked places where you're using a program that reduces human effort or reduces human errors, things of that nature. So there's lots of different ways to reduce costs, and this talks about a lot of those with highlights. And then some tips there on how to be a low-cost provider, and then we're moving into the differentiation strategies. The basic concepts of differentiation is your ability to command a higher price, that you are offering something of such value that people are willing to spend a little bit of extra money for it. Whether that's buying that Lexus over that Chevrolet, whether it's buying that iPhone over the Nokia or something like that. And another significant angle is to try to gain buyer loyalty. Keep coming back to your particular organization to purchase things. Anyway, lots of good information here as well. And then this also talks about the variety of ways that you can try to put something into your product or service that adds value and allows you to boost loyalty and to boost the prices that you are charging. So that's a lot of the chapter 5 types of topics. Chapter 6, which we didn't get to last week, and this is basically taking, now that you have a chosen strategy, what are some other important things? And this figure kind of puts it all. So these are the chapter 5 topics that we were just discussing. And then what are some complementary strategy options? These things that complement what is above it. So, and again, this is increasing your vocabulary of how businesses respond. You are going to be contributing junior member in some organizations, and for you to have a pretty good awareness of the various things that can be done to help your company improve is good. And simplistically, as we grow up, we think, okay, well, we can just lower our price. That's going to be the main way to do business. Or let's add something unique. That'll be the way. Okay, those are good. Those are valuable. Those are all part of it. Yet, wow, there is so much more that is part of the toolbox. And for you to become aware of these, offensive moves, playing defense so your competition doesn't eat your market share. What's going on with website strategy? There's a lot of companies that have spent a lot of money to try to make it valuable. The one thing I like about, for example, Amazon, is they make it very easy for you to click on that. Just buy it now. So you don't have to worry about typing in your name, typing in your credit card number, and you've already got all that stuff in there. And you see something, and then they have that button, buy it now. That's all you have to do. Click on it, and largely it's coming your way. So that has been a major effort that a lot of companies have put money and effort into, is to make it easy and very seamless and quick, with very little barriers to making whatever click you need to get that order on its way. Whether outsource or to keep it in-house. Integration. It's going to be helpful to understand what vertical integration, forward and backward in the value chain. And then this has been an enormous tactic, a favorite approach many organizations have been taking. So anyway, this increases your vocabulary of things that can be done. And believe me, your bosses will be appreciative, and they'll be noticing with what you can offer as far as options. And I even typed that in here. the knowledge of this helps boost your career trajectory. And then in doing all of these things, you have to make these functional area decisions to contribute here. And you can certainly see BSG is involved in all of these, so your simulation makes sense. Then the other thing, and this has a factor also in BSG, what are the advantages of being a first mover into a space, into a different type of product, into a geographic market? Or do you let somebody else take the risk, but you're going to be a fast follower if it looks like it is going to be profitable? And then the other approach is you're just a late mover, getting into the particular market after it's been fairly well established. So these are very conscious decisions that businesses make. And these are very conscious decisions that you and BSG are making. And as we move into phase B, I have this conversation with 499 students all the time that they decide, okay, well, we're going to try to do this first. We want to get there first. We want to expand into this region. We want to create this type of a shoe, this SQ rating, or these model numbers, or with celebrities. We want to be first. And then I also hear quite frequently from teams that, well, this first year or two, we're just going to kind of lay back and see what happens. Okay. Both approaches can have success. Both approaches can be a mistake, but this clearly relates to BSG as well. And then a lot of great information about how to make some of these offensive, defensive things happen. This blue ocean strategy is largely what I'm talking about when, let's see, do we have a good example here? The blue ocean strategy is looking for a grouping in areas that people aren't. So let me show you what that looks like. This is blue ocean mapping. When you're looking here and you're saying, somebody is saying, okay, you know what? Nobody is down here. Maybe we will want to consider moving into that area. So this is what strategic mapping, strategic grouping, this blue ocean stuff kind of gets into, is trying to identify parts that that aren't being done. Okay, now I have a challenge of finding that. Yeah, here we are. Anyway, just wanted to point out that blue ocean stuff. And what else? Anything here? Oh, the avoiding channel conflict. This directly involves the idea of your internet price versus your wholesale pricing. So yeah, you should know what that is by now. So this is the whole idea of website strategies and making sure that your website, selling stuff on the internet, doesn't upset your retailers. That's the issue there. All right, let's talk a little bit of chapter 7. This is international. I think this was the quiz that you just took last night. And there's just wisdom in making sure you can expand, because if domestic markets seem to have limitations, then you could go elsewhere. And basic reasons of why do firms go global? Well, obviously to get new customers, they can achieve lower costs and become more cost competitive, to further exploit valuable resources and capabilities. That's like, if we're really good at something here, we'll also be good in Europe or in Africa. So customers will want our stuff. And then also to spread business risk across a wider market area. If you only do business, for example, in Michigan, but Michigan's economy tanks, whereas Texas or California, Arizona, Georgia, those companies or those economies are doing well, well, we've limited ourselves and we've taken a big risk. Similar if you only are in North America, but we have some significant economic problems. Other parts of the country don't, then we have taken a risk. It would have been wise for us to have spread that risk. A better example could be if your retirement account, by the time you turn 65 or 70, and your 40 or 50 years of investing in a retirement account, you only invested in one stock. That was stupid. That was huge risk. Maybe by chance that one stock over the decades did okay. But what every financial advisor would tell you to do is to spread your risk. Lots of different types of stocks and mutual funds, international, domestic, get it into real estate, get it into manufacturing, get it in the service sector, some that are socially responsible, some that are in this. So that's the idea of spreading the risk. Similar, an advantage in going global is to spread your risk. So in case one geographic area isn't doing well, the other couple of geographic areas that you are doing business in can keep your organization doing fairly well. So that certainly makes a lot of sense. And then there's different ways, well, lots of differences. Obviously, operating costs, they have the example of $2 an hour in India all the way up to $46 in Norway. So this, as you could guess, can be a driving reason why some companies want to locate in different parts of the world. Now, frequently what happens is a lot of companies that have the lowest costs may also have the lowest set of rules and regulations. So you might be able to go someplace for $1.50 an hour and you do not have to worry at all about the environment because they either have no rules or they don't enforce the rules. They don't enforce child labor laws, things of that nature. So your company may have its own ethical standards to ensure that they're not doing too much damage. Not only would I hope your company would do that because it's the right thing to do, but I hope your company or companies would do that because they might think, oh my gosh, if we got caught dumping those chemicals in the river or having those 6-year-old little kids working 10 hours a day for 6 days a week, if we got caught, we would look really bad and we would take a big public relations hit and lose market share and might lose my job. So ideally, your company is motivated to do the right thing because it's the right thing, not because the fear of getting caught. And quite truthfully, you're going to probably want to work for companies that have the right moral fiber. But my guess is if we got together in about 40 or 50 years, we would all have some ugly, ugly stories that happened in our organizations that compromised ethics, legalities, and maybe compromised your values. So sadly, those episodes may show up in your life, and it'd be interesting how you deal with those. I hope you maintain your sense of values and self-respect. Other things that can have a big impact on companies are the local governments and whether they have lots of these rules. That's largely what I was talking about. Sometimes people have rules on the books but don't enforce them. There could be political risks, economic risks, terrorist type risks that are going on. They also put a significant part here on exchange rates, and that is something we're dealing with a little bit in BSG, but it can have an impact. All right, so we talked a little bit about chapter 5, 6, and 7. I do want to talk also about upcoming assignments. If I can get out of here, let's look. Let me try to find the student view. All right, so this is what you should be looking at And what we have going on tonight, you got the peer evaluations. And you did those a few weeks ago. But again, I want, those are very important. I want you to take those seriously and to put in comments. We got round 7 tonight. This Thursday, we have the STAR interviewing. Now, there's some confusion. I think some students think that this STAR interviewing assignment is the professional contact interview, which is due in November. This STAR interview is not where you go out and interview somebody in your professional field. The STAR interviewing is an assignment that has you understanding and preparing for interviews. Basically, you can read this, so I'm not going to cover it very much. But the STAR interviewing, the research shows that the common form of interview questions are, tell me of a time when you did such and such. Now, they're going to ask you, what they're going to fill in here is what they want you to do. So if you're dealing with customer service, they're going to say, tell me of a time when you had to deal with an irate customer. Or if you're dealing with a C++ program, that's going to be a big part of your job. They might be asking, tell me of a time where you had to debug a C++ program and such and such. Whatever it is that you're going to be doing in your position could be filling in these ... Here I have some sample ones. Here's some more information about this, and describes what your assignment is. Basically, your assignment is you're going to go out and find 3 want ads, and then you are going to identify skills that they want and prepare yourself for some of those questions. Again, reading this will be very helpful. This gives some explanation about what the STAR approach is. And basically, what we're talking about is when they ask you, tell me of a time where you had to deal with an unmotivated teammate, the recommendation is that you have a format that you answer. You describe the situation that you were in. What task did you undertake? What action was it? And then how did it turn out? This is a 4-part way to respond to interview questions that you're likely to be faced. So this and then give those results. And then here's a sample of what we're looking at. And here's some web searches. And then down here is the actual form that I want you to fill out. So you're going to copy and paste in a job, a want ad, and then you're going to look at that want ad and you're going to pull out 2 skills that they want you to do and do that. So this is your first want ad and your first and second example. Here's your second job posting. You're going to give a STAR type of response to that. And then here's your third job posting. So you're going to give me a total of 6 STAR examples. And as you go through this and get better at it and understand it, this is going to be helpful for you in your future interviews. And as I put in here in some text here, my guess is you have already seen some of these types of questions in interviews. All right, so that is that assignment. It is located right there. Are there any questions? We are at the midnight hour.